This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome everybody to week 3 of our CISA book club. Today we're going to try to go over some more practice questions. So last week I think we did 10, so we're going to bump that up to about 20 this week, and we've got a lot of slides to go through, so hopefully we can get through it all. Kind of before we start, just kind of want to do some of the top overview stuff again. Anybody new to this session other than Sean this week? If not, I think if you came in after Jerry made his announcement, the previous 2 sessions have been recorded also, so you can always watch those. Looks like we have 11 attendees right now. Hope everybody's got their books. Hope everybody's kind of caught up on their readings. We've got at least one report of somebody having trouble getting signed up for the test. Is anybody having trouble getting books or getting signed up? No? Okay. If you still need your book, the links are on the slide deck, and the slide deck will be available later on. These same 2 links were on the previous slide deck as well. You can get both books at Amazon. The ISACA book will be a little bit cheaper if you get a ISACA membership. So instead of $150, I think it's $130, plus the test fee will be cheaper. And again, you can use these meetings for CPEs or you should be able to use them for CPEs for your other certifications. And so here's kind of the schedule on. Domain 2, IT and Government Management. In my opinion, this is the toughest one. And the questions that we selected for this week, as we're going through them, it's kind of tough to target kind of the second half of the chapter assignments. So we're selecting questions that are going to cover all of Domain 2 again, but plus there's more, and we only covered about 10 last week, so I think this will be good. And here's our full schedule. We're still on track here. Hopefully everybody's caught up on their reading. We said this before, but the ISACA test book, I think that one actually, when the number of pages you go through on that is pretty efficient. You can slam through 100 pages in that book pretty quickly, whereas the Peter Gregory book, I think that goes a little bit slower. At least it did for me, anyways. Again, there's going to be a change in June, so kind of another reason to kind of get signed up for that test. Other than the percentage change on the domain concentration, I am not aware, or we're not aware of any other changes besides that, but who knows? Again, 4 hours, 150 questions. Hopefully that won't change in June. So here's kind of where we are in those 2 books. Hopefully everybody's kind of caught up. Again, that Peter Gregory book, that includes a CD with an ebook copy that you can put on your laptop too. So if you're stuck on a plane, you can read it that way. And so basically the chapters we're picking up from the second part of Domain 2 includes business continuity and auditing IT governance. This auditing IT governance, it's pretty broad, and I think you're going to see other domains in the book that kind of merge a little bit with that, and I think you'll see that in general too. There's a lot of questions that kind of cover a lot of different domains, and we'll kind of discuss that as we're going through some of the questions. Business continuity planning. As you go through that thing, you're going to need to know all these terms and points. Business impact analysis, criticality analysis. Sherry, do you want to add anything on here?
Sure. So on the business impact analysis, could you go back one slide, please? one of the things that I keep seeing over and over in the questions is, what do you do first? And so one of the things that they're really honing in on is that you need to do a business impact analysis before you do criticality analysis and anything else that goes past that point. And if you could do the next slide. So business impact analysis, they continue to say, is always the first step. But of course, the first side said BCP policy. But they always go back to that, and they talk about having this done so that you can identify the impact on the business operations. And so the first step of this is to collect key business processes and IT systems. What is it that are critical? What is going to need to be protected? And then the criticality analysis is the study of each of those items that have been defined as being important and critical to the business, and looking at what happens if it's no longer available, and also what would be the cost of mitigating the risk or impact of that. So again, it really talks about BIA is always first, CA must be completed before moving on. Just keep those in mind as far as that order goes. And the next one?
Yeah, just one quick comment on that from a practical standpoint. When I was reading that for the first time, where it's like, step one is the collection of key business processes and IT systems. I mean, when we're doing our PCI assessments, I mean, that is always just a real point, choke point is where, you start off, it's like, okay, where's your inventory? And it seems like that, no matter what the company size is, that always seems like it's a problem. But as we can see here, it's critical in real life and it's critical for the test too.
Good point, actually. And this one, it is so very true that they will just give you questions and say something like, how do you calculate the ALE? And they'll give you several options, and they'll have things like RPO minus AV, or EF minus ARO, or, a whole different series of, and I'm sure those didn't make sense, but a whole different series for how you calculate these things. So the first thing is truly making sure you know exactly what these are, because if you know what the acronyms are, it should be easy to figure out which answer is correct, but they just give it to you in acronyms, so it's just a whole bunch of alphabet soup for this one.
Yeah, I think some of that might be familiar to those who recently took the CISSP. I'm sorry, Sherry, were you ready for the next one? Hello? Did I lose everybody?
Oh, right here.
Oh, sorry, couldn't. Seemed like it went dead there. Sherry, are you still there? I think we lost Sherry.
She's coming back in now.
I apologize, I got kicked off.
No worries. Were you ready for this next slide, Sherry?
I am, yes. So on the next one, make sure you know the differences of these tests. They are, I keep seeing a lot of questions having to do with these, and they're things like, which one's more intrusive? Which one is the best plan for if you're trying to figure out X? So knowing the difference between a simulation where you're just using a mock disaster and you're walking through it, versus a parallel test where you're actually using a set of your backup systems while your production systems are still going, versus literally cutting over all your systems to backup systems. It's very important to understand the differences between these. They will give you lots of questions on these.
Yeah, that's a good point too, Sherry. And when you're seeing, a lot of times you'll see very similar questions they kind of ask over and over again, but it's just in a different, slightly format. So when you kind of put those questions together, you can really kind of see where ISACA is kind of testing you to be able to differentiate between what they're really after. Ready for the next one?
Yes,
Okay, so now we're into the discussion questions. So this first one, what I would recommend that we do, or for all you guys out there, is when the question pops up, what I think you should do is just kind of read it to yourself really quickly, and then try to come up with an answer before we kind of reveal what the answer is, to just kind of help test yourself. So an IT auditor reviewing an outsourcing operations of IT facilities, he should be most concerned about which of the following findings. I think this is kind of an easier question. B, C, and D are kind of internal to the service provider. And so they're really concerned about what is going to affect their operations. So on this one, it's going to be A, the clause with respect to the business continuity plan and disaster recovery planning of IT operations not included in the outsourcing contract. On this one, an IS auditor is reviewing performance of a service provider. Which of the following is most important? Which of the following is most important document for such review? As you're looking through this, you'll see a lot of questions that talk about measuring the performance of a service provider, and there will be other questions similar to this one where the answers might be something to the effect of the performance reports are coming from the service provider, or the performance reports are coming from an independent auditor. On that one, you're going to want to trust, the independent auditor as opposed to the service provider's internal reports. But in this specific question, we are looking at the service level agreement. On this one, I think this is an easy question, but I just remember seeing this one a lot, both in kind of, it seemed like every little set of practice questions I had, they kind of beat this one to death, and I don't really think it's that difficult. One of the key points on this one, though, they're asking in case of purchase of proprietary software, most important consideration should be, and then when they're talking about proprietary application, another one might be something where, a small-time software vendor, or something that's very specialized, or something that's customized that, you want to make sure that if that vendor goes out of business, that you've got access to the code. And so basically they want that source code to be placed in an escrow.
Hey, Clark, sorry, I missed the answer for question number 2. Can you just flip back to it for a second so I can grab that? Yeah, okay, thanks.
Got it. When an outsourcing agreement in place between an organization and cloud service provider, what remains the responsibility of the organization? I think this is a pretty easy question. Just because you're outsourcing the you're outsourcing doesn't mean you can outsource the responsibility. You can't, if something crashes, you can't say, hey, that's AWS's problem, go talk to them. So the answer is going to be accountability on that one. And I think this one is fairly easy. The greatest advantage of using web services for the exchange of information between two systems is, and that one's going to be efficient interfacing. How's everybody doing? Are you coming up with answers that are in the ballpark on these?
Yeah, hey, Clark. I think you mentioned this last meeting, but are these questions, these review questions, are they similar to the exam questions themselves?
Yeah, I can. These questions, there's a few different sources of these questions. Actually, the last 10 are from an old ISACA book I found. but for the most part, these questions are not coming from the ISACA review guide and the Peter Gregory book. And the reason for that is I don't want to have like spoilers, just so these kind of are all fresh to you guys. But the rest of them are from those links that are provided in those in the slides for the practice questions, the online ones.
Okay, I'm just, the reason I'm asking is, so like in the CISSP exam, the questions weren't like this at all. They were way more scenario based. So I'm just trying to get a sense of what the CISA exam questions might be like.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I can tell you is that when you're looking at that ISACA book, the practice questions, and you're seeing, you know, kind of the typical question there, how many, you know, what the word count of the actual question is. I was surprised that the word count on the actual exam seemed to be a lot shorter, a lot smaller. So the questions were not very wordy from what I remember.
Okay, that helps.
Okay.
Oh, and just as a reminder, we don't need to address it now, but before the end of the meeting, there were some questions on the Slack channel regarding installing the test engine from the CD. So let's make sure we cover that before we end the meeting today.
Okay.
Clark, could we discuss this one? And the reason being, you know, it's fairly fine-grained from a technology standpoint when you're talking about using web services. And, you know, if you haven't programmed web services or worked with them, the idea I would have is it would be about secure communications and data protection. So I'm not even really sure what efficient interfacing means. But just, I guess in general terms, it seems like this is pretty fine-grained compared to, you know, looking at SOAs or such.
Yeah, I think that it's fairly simplistic, and the key word they're focusing here is the greatest advantage, which to me means I think they're basically saying which is the easiest here, and I think that's really what they're after on this question.
And how many, more fine-grained where, a CISA would be expected to know whether it's web services or SSO, or how did that come up in the test? Is it a lot of those?
I can't remember there being a lot of those, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I mean, we're going to come up to another a question a little down the road here, which I think is very difficult, and I'm still, I know the answer, and I'm looking at it, and I still can't figure it out, but I'll mention that when we come to it.
Hey, Greg, okay. This is Gene. Hey, Greg, this is Gene. Hey, Clark, could you just go back to one page? So I'm thinking C is the answer because, secure communications and improved performance, it depends on how it's actually implemented. So it might not, they may do it wrong, so it's not guaranteed. Where efficient interfacing with a web service is, it's pretty much, a done deal.
I think maybe too, also on that, you're just using kind of standardized protocols. You're not probably having to do a lot of customization to make that work.
Right.
Yeah, this is one of those. I think this is one of those questions where you don't like any of the answers, right? But you choose the one that sucks the least. I think is the idea here.
And I think it's also one of those questions where your experience can kind of lead you kind of on a different path here, which I think you run into that a lot.
Yeah, I was looking to get, and Gene's point's well taken. It depends on how it's configured, whether you're going to have secure communications or improved performance. Yeah. So, I guess you could say the big umbrella would be that efficient interfacing.
Yep. Good analysis.
Thanks, Gene.
So I like this question. I think it's a good example of choosing the best answer when none of the choices are really wrong. To optimize an organization's business contingency plan, an IS auditor should recommend conducting a business impact analysis in order to determine A, the business processes that generate the most financial value for the organization and therefore must be recovered first. The priorities in order for recovery to ensure alignment with the organization's business strategy. C, the business processes that must be recovered following a disaster to ensure the organization's survival. D, the priorities in order of recovery, which will recover the greatest number of systems in the shortest time frame. So none of those are really wrong, but as you're looking at this, what CISA is going to be after is kind of, I think, the most core foundational answer here. And in that case, this answer should be C, to ensure the organization's survival. If you're kind of ranking these from kind of you know, the most basic thing to the least basic thing, C is going to be, you know, the most basic.
It's really interesting. If we go back, Clark, we may, that A and C are using very similar language, and B and D the same way, but mixing it, it's almost, I just think it's interesting how they put it that way. It's seems a little bit like you were talking about. You have to dig a little deeper.
Yeah.
I think they're trying to differentiate between the business impact analysis, which happens first, which is just listing the key business processes. And I think it was called the criticality analysis, which happens second, which is where you stack rank and prioritize the order of recovery. That's why A and D are not the right answers, but B is why B is the best answer. I think that's what they're getting at. I also noticed in the test questions that there were a lot of questions just like this, asking you to put the business impact analysis first to identify the most important business processes, but there were very few, maybe not even any questions on the criticality analysis process. I thought that was a bit odd. That was in the SACA review guidebook.
Good feedback. On this one, which of the following types of independent verification increases the level of confidence that the application processed successfully and the data are in proper balance? So on this one, audit trails and exception reporting really don't have anything to do with data verification, so you can basically throw those two out. So you're coming in down to reconciliation and supervisory views, and between those two, reconciliation should be the better choice. And this question is coming from a different site, just because I'm kind of cutting and pasting the answers from the various sources of these practice questions. And so that looks a little different. An IS auditor who was involved in designing an organization's business continuity plan has been assigned to audit the plan. The IS auditor should decline the assignment, inform management of a possible conflict of interest after completing the audit assignment, inform the business continuity planning team of the possible conflict of interest prior to beginning the assignment, communicate the possibility of interest to management prior to starting the assignment. And on this one, the ones we can kind of toss out, I think, pretty easily are the first one, decline the assignment. The second one, you wouldn't want to inform of a possible conflict of interest after the audit, so we can throw that one out. So then we're basically down to the last two. The first one, the third one, inform the business continuity plan. That's kind of, informing themselves, since that person was part of the business continuity plan. So the last choice on this one is going to be the best answer. No problems in that one, right? This one, I think, for me, this one was a pretty difficult question. During an audit, an IS auditor notes that an organization's business continuity plan does not adequately address information confidentiality during a recovery process. The IS auditor should recommend that the plan be modified to include the level of information security required when business recovery procedures are invoked, information security roles and responsibilities in the crisis management structure, information security resource requirements, or D, change management procedures for information security that could affect business continuity arrangements. On this one, I think the challenge here on this one is kind of distinguishing some of these answers, and they're pretty close. So I don't know if anyone wants to take a stab at this one or have any comments on it.
A is the one that makes sense, isn't it? Where you would just talk about what level of information security should be required for the process. The second one, roles and responsibilities, isn't going to address confidentiality, I don't think. Resource requirements aren't going to be applicable. You can worry about resourcing after. Change management doesn't appear to be part of it, I would say. So I'd guess A.
Okay. All right, Sean.
Huh.
Good one. He found that question easier than I did. Sorry, my Alexa just started talking to me. Okay, question 10. An IS auditor reviewing a new outsourcing contract with a service provider would be most concerned at which of the following were missing. And I think you'll see, you kind of run into questions like this a lot. So as we're going through this, a clause providing a right to audit, providing a right to audit service provider, that's good. A clause defining penalty payments for poor performance, that's kind of after the fact. Predefined service level report templates, that's pretty generic. A clause regarding supplier limitation of liability. On this one, I think what is important on this one is on C, to help you throw this one out, where it's saying predefined. So I think that one's fairly straightforward. Number 11. In order for management to effectively monitor the compliance of processes and applications, which of the following would be most ideal? I think this is another one where kind of keywords put things in context, especially with the use of the word effectively. Anyone want to take a stab at this one?
This one looks
says
tricky.
Management, so I'm assuming we need pictures.
You need what? I'm sorry.
Pictures?
Oh, pictures? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's C, a dashboard.
Give that man a cigar.
Pretty pictures.
So kind of jumping back to that one real quick. They're talking about most effectively is what they're really after, making sure that the reader keys on the word effectively. I mean, you've got a central document repository, a knowledge management system. I mean, those might be loaded with all kinds of information, but to try to effectively monitor things, those would not be that very effective. So dashboard is the answer in this case. And I just remember there being all kinds of questions related to strategic planning and things. Which of the following be included in an IS strategic plan? Specifications for planned hardware purchases, analysis of future business objectives, target dates for development projects, or annual budgetary targets for the IS department. And what they're really after, I think, a lot of times on these questions regarding strategic planning is making sure you don't get caught up in any specifics. So on this one, I think we could pretty much throw out A pretty easily. And when we're talking about strategic plans, we're really not talking about budgets, so we can throw out D pretty easily. And then so we're kind of left with B and C.
B is the least tactical. Yeah.
Yep. Here, we'll go back to that. So, yep. Uh, 13. This is kind of similar to the last one, more strategic planning talk. Which of the following best describes an IT department's strategic planning process? The IT department will have either short range or long range plans depending on the organization's broader plans and objectives. The IT department's strategic plan must be time and project oriented, but not so detailed as to address and help determine priorities to meet business needs. Long-term planning for the IT department should recognize organizational goals, technological advances, and regulatory requirements. D, short-term planning for the IT department does not need to be integrated in the short-range plans of the organization, since technological advances will drive the IT department's plans quicker than organizational plans. Anyone want to take a stab at that one?
Charlie is true. I don't know if it's the best.
Sean is batting 1,000 here. So if we want to jump back to that one, I mean, D, we can throw that one out pretty easily. So C is going to be the best answer on that one. And here's one that kind of goes back to, I think you're going to see a lot of stuff related to roles as ISACA sees it. Most important responsibility of a data security officer in an organization is A, recommending and monitoring data security policies, B, promoting security awareness within the organization, C, establishing procedures for IT security policies, or D, administering physical and logical access controls. This one shouldn't be too tough. I mean, I think on this one we can kind of throw out like, you know, B right away, promoting security awareness within the organization, since we're talking about a data security officer.
Is data security officer different than information security officer? Might be a dumb question because I missed the first two. But
yeah, I just think they're basically talking about, you know, basically targeting just the data, basically.
Gotcha.
There you go.
Wow.
The data security officer's prime responsibility is recommending and monitoring data security policies. Promoting security awareness within the organization is one of the responsibilities of the data security officer, but not as important as recommending and monitoring data security policies. Yeah, I mean, when I'm reading that too, I'm probably reading too much into what I see out there in the field, in terms of, you know, security awareness and who's typically in charge of that.
Yeah, I think if you look at it this way, the policies define what the other three look like, right? So therefore, it's more important than the others.
What is considered the most important, most critical element for the successful implementation of an information security program? On this one, you're going to see a lot of stuff related that's similar to this that are kind of peppered throughout all the domains. And anyone want to take a stab at this one?
I choose it B.
You are correct, sir.
Yeah, it's hard to get budget if management's not approving.
Yeah. But you're going to see, as you run through the practice questions, I think you're going to see this over and over again about, nothing's really going to work without they may word it from a bunch of different standpoints. They might call it executive management, they might call it ownership, they might call it board of directors, but at some level you need the upper echelon to kind of embrace the project. I think this is, if you read it carefully, I don't think it's a difficult question. If you read this one fast, I think you could kind of get tripped up on it. An IS auditor should ensure that IT governance performance measures evaluate the activities of IT oversight committees, provide strategic IT drivers, adhere to regulatory standards and definitions, evaluate the IT department. So the key thing here is the IS auditor should ensure that IT governance is what they're measuring. So when they're talking about, we could probably throw out the IT department, because that's just, that's more going to be based on operations. And adhere to regulatory reporting standards and definitions. That's kind of close. Provide strategic IT drivers. We can probably throw that one out. And then evaluate the activities of IT oversight committees. And on this one, that's going to be the best answer.
Yeah, this one kind of ties, we got the word governance and then oversight seems to be somewhat of a common theme that they'll give you a clue if you read carefully.
Yeah, exactly. And then, I think this one's kind of a moderately difficult question. Which of the following tasks may be performed by the same person in a well-controlled information processing computer center? And on this one, you need to make sure you understand the roles as ISACA sees them, and maybe not so much that, what you kind of run into. And we're really kind of talking about separation of duties on this one. So, typically you're going to want to make sure you've got, development and operations separated. So which of those really are kind of fall along those two paths and which one doesn't?
I think it'd be interesting if anyone has come up with a good way to track the differences of the different roles and what they can do and not do. They give you a matrix to review. You get a lot of questions on that.
Yeah.
If anybody has come up with a good way to get them in your head, that would probably be something good for everybody to know.
Yeah, maybe the first thing to do is kind of erase what you've got in your head from what you see in the field, because that'll trip you up. So they give a pretty good explanation on this answer here. Is common for the system development maintenance to be undertaken by the same person. In both, the programmer requires access to the source code in the development environment, but should not be allowed access in the production environment. Choice A is correct because the roles of security administration choice A is incorrect because the roles of security administration and change management are incompatible functions. The level of security administration access rights could allow changes to be could allow changes to go undetected. Computer operations and system development, choice B, are incompatible since it would be impossible for an operator to run a program that he or she had amended. Choice C is incorrect because the combination of system development and change control would allow program modifications to bypass change control approvals.
Yeah, you know, for that one, if we could go
Sure.
back, it seems that the whole concept of system development, I have an operations background, so what I see as systems development seems to be different than what they're defining in system development and systems maintenance. I see a systems maintenance, to me, that's patching and such.
Right. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think that one's, I felt like that was a moderately difficult question.
Yeah,
you really have to read every one to eliminate them. Number 18. Which of the following is the most critical control over database administration? I kind of thought this was moderately difficult too. Anyone want to take a stab at this one?
Gotta be Bravo. Or no?
Yeah.
And again, he gets it. Good job. Segregation of duties will prevent a combination of conflicting functions. This is a preventive control, and it is most critical control over database administration. Approval of DBA activities does not prevent the combination of conflicting functions. Review of access logs and activities is a detective control. If DBA activities are improperly approved, review of access logs and activities may not reduce the risk. Reviewing the use of database tools does not reduce the risk, since this is only detective control and does not prevent combination of conflicting functions. You're going to see some of that stuff where you really need to understand the difference between detective controls and things you're looking at after the fact, like logs and whatnot. When you're looking at a log, that's not a preventive control. So just make sure you understand all that. Number 19. Kind of similar to the last question. When a complete segregation of duties cannot be achieved in an online system environment, which of the following functions should be separated from the others? And so what is differentiating this from the last question is they're basically taking the segregation of duties away from the choices. Anyone want to take a stab at this one? On this one, I think if you kind of look at each individual one,
I guess you wouldn't want to be able to originate and authorize at the same time.
Yeah, I think authorization, you shouldn't be able to authorize anything that you create or record or anything. I say B.
Okay.
What is recording? Is that like logging?
Yeah, it would be logging, I believe, is what they mean. Good job, Jerry. How are we doing on time here? Not pretty good. Number 20. In a small organization where segregation of duties is not practical, an employee performs the function of a computer operator and application programmer. Which of the following controls should the IS auditor recommend? On this one, again, this I think is going to be key, some of the wording here when they're saying small organization. We run into a lot of, even if it's not a small organization, you know, what's kind of more of a trend these days is to have DevOps folks. So this could apply in a large organization too. Which of the following controls should the IS auditor recommend? Automated logging of changes to development libraries, additional staff to provide segregation of duties, procedures to verify that only approved program changes are implemented, access controls to prevent the operator from making program modifications. Anyone want to take a stab at this one?
Charlie with a little bit of alpha as a backup answer.
So as we're looking at this, I mean, because they're saying a small organization, I think B, additional staff to provide segregation of duties. I think they're basically implying that they don't have the budget for it, so we can throw out B. And D, they're basically already saying it's kind of, this guy's wearing more than one hat, so we can throw D out the window. So as we're looking at A also, automated logging of changes to development libraries.
I was going
they're
to say
talking
for this,
about,
oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to say for this particular one, it looks like on the procedures, those are considered, procedures are administrative controls, which means that there's nothing technical to prevent the person from doing them. Therefore, A is probably the best answer because it's automated logging and it's a detective control rather than an administrative control. So I'm going to guess A on this one.
So you got one vote for A and one vote for C, I think. On this one, they're looking for C. In smaller organizations, it generally is not appropriate to recruit additional staff to achieve the strict segregation duties. The IS auditor must look at alternatives. Of the choices, C is the only practical one that has an impact. An IS auditor should recommend processes that detect changes to production, source, and object code, such as code comparison, so that changes can be reviewed by a third party on a regular basis. This would be a compensating control process. Choice A, involving logging of changes to development libraries, would not detect changes to production libraries. Choice D is in effect requiring a third party to do the changes, which may not be practical in a small organization. So jumping back to that question on choice A, when they're talking about, I think on choice A, what they're adding in that one to kind of disqualify it is the term development, since they're talking about someone who's kind of in a DevOps role.
Yep,
like
agreed.
what Lori
That
was
makes
saying.
sense.
Yeah, Lori, what you were saying about procedures and the lack of technical controls available in a procedure, or as you described, I think that made a lot of sense, though. So just maybe a bit of an error in the question.
No, I think that I need to have read the entire thing for the choice of A to the point of, you know, it's the development libraries, but if it would have been automated logging of changes, period, it probably would have been the best answer.
Yeah, I tend to agree that I think the key there is A doesn't say production.
Right. Right. Yeah,
And,
the scope of it isn't quite right.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this the first time in our first meeting when I took the test back last September. You get 4 hours and it's 150 questions, and it took me the first 2 hours to basically go through and answer every question. And I did, you know, you've got the ability to mark questions you want to go back to, but basically what I did for the second half is I just basically went over every single question. And there were several that when I reread them, I realized I got burned because I didn't read the question correctly. There was some little key word that I didn't pick up on. And when you're going through the practice questions and you're reading the question, then, you know, you're guessing what the answer is, and you're seeing what the actual answer is, I think you're going to run into that a lot. You're going to go, oh, I need to make sure I read the question. That's going to be a recurring theme you're going to keep telling yourself, is just, you know, read the question, make sure you're reading the question thoroughly. And that's I think that's kind of the authors of these test questions. I think that's kind of the whole point of these questions, is to make sure you're, reading the question to make sure that, there's some key word that you're picking up on. Anyways, good discussion on this question. Do we think for next time, do we want to do more questions? Try to get 25 in or so. What does everybody think? 20 enough?
I think it'd be great.
Okay.
Yes, I think as many as we can get in. I really like the discussions.
Okay. Well, yeah, we try to, as we move along, we'll focus less on the top level stuff and just more of the meat and potatoes of some of the practice questions, I think. Let's see. So for next week, you've got the reading schedule on another slide. If there's any follow-up questions anybody wants to post anything to the Slack channel, that's great. Review more of the questions out of Peter Gregory in the ISACA book. We've got these, these online resources for you to look at too. Anybody, I know that we mentioned at the beginning here that one party had an issue scheduling an exam. Has anybody had any trouble getting their books or scheduling the exam?
I did mine through the ISACA. They sent me a link and say, here, schedule your exam. And then it actually had me log into the website. It took me to the testing center, and it was pretty straightforward, but I'm not sure if you're trying to do it outside of the ISACA website.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I did it too. And when I first did it, I just remember when I was trying to select my days, there was kind of an issue because I wanted to do it on a Saturday morning, and I guess that's what everybody wants to do with those testing centers, because they're not just, it's not just an ISACA test that's there. It's testing from all kinds of different industries. So that was my challenge when I signed up for my test. But other than that, I didn't really have any issues with it. Has anybody had any trouble getting a book? Nothing's out of stock or anything for anybody?
No, I think the fellow that raised that concern, he wasn't able to attend today. So, hey, Clark, Rose posted a comment on the chat regarding next session.
Okay.
Rose, did you want to chime in and
Yeah, I was just making the comment that as we continue going through the domains, pulling in, a random question or two from previous domains, I think will help to continue to build on it, right? Because I think it would be disadvantageous. I can't even say the word, for us to not keep stuff that we've already discussed in the discussion as we move forward. So while the focus will be on, say, next week we start on domain 3, and having questions surrounding that, if we could add in, just a question from this domain, I think that would be helpful. It was just a thought.
Yeah, I think, we'll try to, spend, the overwhelming percentage of time just focusing on the practice questions. And also, when I'm looking at these questions, a lot of times it seems like they do cover kind of multiple domains. Some of the questions are kind of broad. And then when we're picking out questions from different sources, it seems like they kind of tread across different domains as well. So, but yeah, we'll take that into account.
There was also one change made to the schedule for next week. Clark, would you go to the next slide? We were originally scheduled to read through like page 183 or something such as that. So if you're seeing that and you're wondering which is correct, I actually cut back on that because it was a good break in the knowledge that they're teaching us. One, you get to a really good ending point, and the other way, it just seemed like there were only a few more pages to read to finish the chapter. So we cut back on that a little. So if you're wondering, that's what that's about.
Are you, Sherry, are you referring to the Peter Gregory book or the ISACA book?
Good question. The Peter Gregory book.
Okay.
The big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like there were only, I don't know, 8 or 10 pages left or something after what we had initially written. And I looked at the material and thought, the break was probably better if we did a little earlier. So if you'll follow today's slide and you see the difference, that's just what the difference is. You don't have to read as much next week.
And I mentioned this too before. And I don't know if this is going to be true with everybody, but it was certainly true for me. When I was reading that Peter Gregory book, it kind of went slow for me. Whereas when I went through that ISACA book, on the practice questions, that was actually, I found that fairly easy to get through a bunch of pages fairly quickly on that.
I had to put up a little a card, so because it's so easy to see the answers right below the questions. So I have to make sure I'm not looking ahead.
Yeah, I would take a piece of blank paper, and actually sometimes you need 2 pieces of paper just in case your peripheral vision is really strong. If you're on the left side of the page of that ISACA book, you have 1 piece of paper covering the questions or the answers to the question, and then on the right side of the book, you completely cover that page to keep yourself honest. I think let me see that thing real quick here. I've got it in front of me here. Yeah, because the problem is on that ISACA, not really the problem, but on that ISACA book, the correct answers are in bold. So that might, from your peripheral vision, it might be easy to accidentally see that, whether you consciously see it or not. I think it's, like Greg was saying, it's good to take a piece of paper and cover that up.
Well, really quick, someone had posted on the Slack channel they were having a difficulty installing the test engine from the CD. Paul, I think that was you, right?
Yeah, I didn't have problems installing it. It's just, it looks all funky when it's running. I put a screenshot in the Slack channel. Anyone else see that? Looks like the font size is like not matched my computer or something.
I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, that is pretty small. Is your screen resolution real high on your computer or something?
I don't know. I think that's probably the problem. It's a Windows 10 VM. I was just wondering if I haven't tried to tinker with it yet. I was just wondering if before I did, if anyone else had seen those same problems.
Yeah, I haven't seen this. If there's nothing under the file or options within that test engine, if you just maybe try changing the screen resolution. If you've got if you're using like multiple monitors, you can basically make one monitor a different resolution than the other one, and you can try that. Would be
that's a good idea.
Advice. You know how to do that, right?
Which is this the CISA exam guide CD that we're speaking of?
This is the test engine on the CD that's included with the Peter Gregory book.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Yeah. Thank you.
Anything else? I think we're a couple minutes over our little time window here. But thank you for everybody for joining, and I think we had some good discussion points there. And I think Sean and Greg, you both did, and Jerry, you guys all did really good on those your first guesses there. So hopefully you're feeling pretty comfortable. Or getting more comfortable, I should say.
Thanks for taking the time to run us through this part.
Yeah, no problem. For what it's worth, when that ISACA book, I basically, the 1,000 questions in there, I ran through that entire book the week before I took the test. And that, I really ran through it once, and at the end of it, there's some practice tests. And what I did is I made a little Excel answer key thing where I could kind of quickly grade myself and run through the test real quick. I can actually post a copy of that if I still have it. Will maybe make going through the practice test easier, but you might not want to do the complete full practice test until you're done, until you've read more, depending on your current level of comfort, of course. And if that is it, I think we can conclude today's meeting.
Great. Thanks, folks. I'll stop the recording now, and as soon as our folks can get it posted on the blog site, I'll send out a notification that it has on Slack and email.
All right. Thank you, Jerry. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you, guys.